Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of the Win or Lose podcast. Unfortunately, our inaugural episode is going to be after a loss as WSU continues to slide and fall to 8-13 overall, 3-5 in conference, and they lose 95-92 to the University of San Diego. And really, what was just a disgusting game from the start. WSU got off to a really slow start in the first 4 minutes of the game. San Diego was just dominating them on the boards. They had 5 offensive rebounds. They had a possession where they had 3 offensive rebounds just on a singular possession. Turnovers all over the place. And the Cougs were down 18 midway through the first half. And it kind of looked like after that San Francisco game where they were really competitive, that it just looked like it all had fallen apart for WSU and David Riley. And there was really a lack of effort. But they got back into the game. Ace Glass came alive. The San Diego commentators were loving to bring up how they had kept Ace off the board. They'd only had 2 points, but he came alive. Cougs went on a 10-0 run and cut the lead to 8, and then San Diego got a bucket right before the half. So the Cougs trailed by 10, but really that felt like a win given how poorly they played in the first half. But the three-point shooting defense of woes continued. I mean, it was just awful, and I was kind of in a debate on Twitter. I was saying it's ridiculous how all of these crummy three-point shooters always kill WSU. San Francisco had 2 players who were 33% and 31%. Yang was 4 for 4, and the guy with the hyphenated last name, I can't recall, but he was 4 for 5. So, the Cougs are helping off some of the opposing teams, lesser shooters, and they're just getting burnt by these guys. And tonight was the same story. San Diego was 54% from 3, and they were just draining them. One of the commentator at one point, the true freshman Rip for San Diego made a 3. It was his 3rd career made 3, and the other guy who made 4, he had never attempted more than 2, or he never made more than 2 threes in a single game this season. It's just his first year, but WSU is just getting torched from outside. And offensively, the Cougs have been great. Last game they shot close to 50%, and they were really just, they built out a 7-point lead against San Francisco and then just fell apart late, but they gave up 85 in that contest. They gave up 95 tonight in a game where, they never got within 10 until it was too late. They finally cut it to 7, cut it to 4. They got it to 2 with 7 seconds left, but it just wasn't enough time. And I mean, if you give up 95 points to San Diego, frankly, you deserve to lose. Greg Woods made a great point on Twitter that they're really missing Thrasserson's, Tomas's perimeter defense, which I hadn't even thought about. I was looking at this 4-game stretch for WSU after they clawed back to 8-9. And then they had a 4-game stretch against St. Mary's, Gonzaga, San Francisco, and San Diego. Obviously, a step up in competition from where the Cougs were getting wins against Eastern, Mercer, Portland, LMU, and Oregon State to, get back towards 500. And they're coming into this 4-game stretch, and you feel like they're improved and, they're going to play better defense in these games than they had earlier in the year against quality opponents. And it just hasn't happened. And I was trying to figure out why, and Thrasserson's perimeter defense is a great call out by Greg Woods over at the Spokesman Review, just to point that out, because they have been awful on 3-point defense. 54% tonight. San Francisco was 55% last game. Gonzaga was only 6 of 16, but they weren't really trying to get at the 3-point line. They were really pounding the paint, as we know, 52-12 in the paint for Gonzaga in that game. And then St. Mary's was 47%, and they really got killed by the one dent in the first half on St. Mary's, made 4 threes. So the Cougs have just been getting killed in the 3-point game the past couple games, even though, they're playing good offense, shooting well. And it would really help to have Thrasserson there for that. But this is a continuation of what we saw last season. So, would Thrasserson help? Yes, but also last season we saw them give up 40 points to multiple guards. Malik Beasley on San Francisco, and the kid from Pacific who had that crazy game. And just time and time again, the Cougs just aren't stout enough defensively. Even the kid tonight had 22 points in the second half for San Francisco, or San Diego, excuse me, and he was just getting anywhere he wanted on Morton. who's been a good defender, but just really soft defense, really soft coming around screens, and just not good enough. And eventually that's going to have to fall on the coach. So after David Riley and the Cougs started 13-3 last year, they were 4-0 in the WCC, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're no fall off, 13 transfers, and we're still really going to push forward. He finished the season 6-13 last year, and obviously they didn't have Coward, but that was still a more talented team. And then this season, if you include this season, he's 14-26 since that 13-3 start. And you can, that 13-3 start, had he had Coward, could WSU have won 25 games last year easily? How much of a leeway are we giving David Riley? But, that didn't happen. Coward got hurt, and it's been really ugly. And even when they were winning, they were still giving up a lot of points. They were just outscoring their opponents. So I don't really know where WSU goes with David Riley from here. First podcast, I don't really want to be calling for anyone's jobs, but he's got $1 million buyout, which is something that WSU really doesn't have a lot of money hanging around. They're trying to invest in the football program, trying to invest back in the NIL. So WSU doesn't have $1 million to pay to fire their coach. And I also think it's important for people to remember where WSU was before Kyle Smith. I was just looking at Basketball Reference before recording this. In WSU, Kyle Smith never had a losing season. Maybe he was a one game under 500 his first season, 500, progressively better each year. But, then we were winning 19 to 20 games. Some of the Ernie Kent, and then going back to the Ken Bone years, were really lean. Ken Bone had a couple successful years building off of what Tony Bennett did. And, but, he had Clay, and they had a decent season, NIT Final Four, CBI Final, but then it got really dark. And so I think there's a lot of Cougar fans who are used to, or maybe new from, when I was in school, the Kyle Smith days where, even if we weren't in the tournament, we made the NIT Final Four, we won 20 games, and we were competitive. And even the year we were bad, we had Muhammad Gay, and we swept UW, and those were certainly more fun days. But to go from that to 3-5 in the WCC, 8-13 overall, drop the opener to Idaho is a pretty startling turnaround. So I totally understand where fans are coming from, but I think maybe they're forgetting how hard of a program this is to win basketball games at. That all of that being said, it has been pretty ugly, and it has to get better quickly. I don't know if that's going to happen this season because most of these kids, Glass especially, probably getting portal offers in a season that could be all for naught. It'd be hard to motivate these kids to get going the second half of the year. But in this team isn't untalented. I think he did an okay job assembling the roster. Glass obviously is fantastic. Favors obviously is an elite shooter. Yalaho's a decent stretch big. Okafor's really turned himself into a pretty solid player. Ugbo hasn't been quite as good as you'd like to see, but you throw Thrasserson in the mix, like they have some serviceable players that a good coach would be able to pull together into a half decent team, and it just hasn't happened so far. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes, but if it wasn't for that $1 million buyout, I think Riley's seat would be starting to get a little warm. Again, this is the first episode of the Win or Lose podcast. Obviously, we hope to be coming to you after more wins than losses, but we'll see how that goes the rest of this basketball season. This is just a little personal venture I'm doing, trying to get myself more involved and just create a positive brand and culture around WSU. I've been a WSU fan pretty much my whole life, and grew up in the prime Luke Falk, Mike Leach, Holiday, all those things. So when the Pac-12 went away, it was pretty startling for me, and something that I hold near and dear in my life. So I just think it's important for this program to. We all need to act like we're a part of a major program, because I think that's what we are, and I think that's what we know we can be. And so that's why I'm starting this podcast. I just want to do something to try to give back to WSU and try to build a culture around WSU that's about winning and that's about pursuing being a bigger program, pursuing greatness as we move into the new Pac-12. So this is just my first little test pilot podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping to do some interviews here in the near future, hoping to get some fellow people from the Twitter space on, maybe some people from some other fan bases, mix it up a little bit. And just talk WSU, maybe some Seattle sports sometimes, but really just use the over amount of knowledge that I have about WSU, the unnecessary amount of knowledge about WSU, I should say, to some kind of benefit and create something positive for my university. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate everyone who tuned in to this first episode. And hopefully next time I'll be catching you guys after a win. Thank you guys. Go Cougs.